Well, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, for everybody that is joining us from across the world. Thank you for. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Just get me muted here. Otherwise, this should be quite interesting. There we go. So thank you for joining us today for our Unashamedly Ethical webinar. We're currently busy with our series, which is about minding your business, or Mind Your Business, which is a series about understanding the impact our mental capacity has, our mind has on our business. We see so much time is being spent on trying to get our productivity going in our businesses, finding ways to increase profit. But do we really understand the mental space when it comes to our businesses? In what capacity do I find myself operating? Am I in survival mode? What does that mean? Which decisions am I making? Does my brain operate at its optimal when I'm in survival mode? Am I in success mode? Am I trying to build an empire? Am I in significance mode, where I'm saying, my business is doing well, I need to look after those around me? Am I looking at employee wellness? Do I realize that employee wellness has a big impact on the productivity that I see? But let me not hop on today. And my name is Harry Loebser, and I have the privilege of being part of the Unashamedly Ethical team. And yes, we have a footprint in 144 nations. So it's exciting to know that the world out there is passionate about ethics. We're operating with just under 7,000 businesses and organizations that have signed up to Unashamedly Ethical. And within those businesses, we have a wealth of experience and people that are passionate about this work that we're doing. So in the world of ethics, values, and clean living, we've selected a panel today to discuss with you on the topic, when mental health and business collide. So without further ado, I'm going to ask my panelists to switch on their cameras, and for me, allow me an opportunity to be able to introduce them to you. And I'm going to start with the ladies first, if we can. Anita Craig. And Anita is an educator and active instrument of transformation. And she's an awakened teacher. She's a conscious leader and a businesswoman. She's a spiritual guide and an author of mystical poetry, grounded in business, having been an entrepreneur for over 21 years. Anita is solid, logical, practical, heart-centered, and intuitive. As a facilitator and mentor, Anita assists leaders, teams, and organizations to find their true blueprint and fulfill on their highest purpose. So, Anita, thank you so much for joining us today, and thank you for sharing your wealth of wisdom with us. There we go. Anita, short and sweet. Thanks, Anita. I'm going to move over then to Daniel Dabrowski. Daniel Dabrowski is an entrepreneur who started his first business at the age of 20 years old, growing that business into a multi-million rand enterprise. He has worked in nearly every industry. Daniel then started the ICH Group, which seeks to find innovative training solutions to solve the unemployment stats and give the next generation a chance to excel, running certified courses in the insurance industry and beyond, with upskilling and accreditation and employment. Daniel Dabrowski, welcome.
Thanks, Harry. Excited to be here. Excited to be here on the panel, guys. Appreciate it.
Thanks for being here with us, Daniel. Then lastly, I would like to welcome Marinus de Kok. Marinus de Kok, we've been journeying for a while together, and Marinus is a registered industrial psychologist, consulting in areas of organizational design, learning and development, performance coaching, human resource management, recruitment, and psychometric assessments. He's completed his MCOM in Psych, focused in industrial and in organizational psychology at the University of Stellenbosch. He is also the owner of a flagship Caltech service station and a Fresh Stop convenience store with a strong track record in fuel convenience retail. So as you'll see, our panelists have quite a broad background, and it's so exciting for me to welcome them. Welcome, Marinus, and thank you for giving us some of your time today. Good. Well, I think to get us going today, it would be my privilege and honor just to ask each of the panelists for maybe just a brief opening statement regarding this issue of mental health in business and why you are passionate about this. So I'm going to just go around the horn here on my screen, and I'm going to ask Marinus. Marinus, this space of mental health in business, why is this an area of passion for you, sir?
Well, thank you. I'm having some slight connectivity issues. Are you able to hear me there?
Yes, we are.
Okay, fantastic. Well, obviously, as an industrial psychologist, usually we the guys that that get called when mental health and business collide. So for me, having dealt with this firsthand and on a continuous basis, dealing with people in health and mental well-being in the workplace, this is something that I do day to day. And as someone who also runs a company, it's very important for me to make sure that I'm creating a space where mental health is relevant and flourishing.
Good. Well, thank you for that. Anita, why is this such a passion area for you?
So coming from the world of just looking at it through the lens of pure consciousness, firstly, I don't think that mental health can be separated out in an integrative experience or world viewpoint. And, you know, all parts are linked. However, that being said, it's very useful to look at the mind and look at our thoughts, our structures, our identity that is very much this mental construct that makes up the individual, and then the individual related into the ecosystem. So my fascination is very much with that aspect of the conversation and healing ourselves in this world towards wholeness and wellness. And it's a very powerful place to start in the workplace, because we pay a lot of attention to the mental working faculty in the place of work and how we treat that effectively, or allow it to become more of a disease, actually.
That's good. I appreciate that view. That's excellent. Daniel, many decades in the business game. What's your fascination with mental health?
Yeah, Harry. So I just want to commend my panelists there in what they're saying. We do a lot of change management, and I do a lot of leadership development training and working with businesses in culture development. And I think the days of telling an employee or someone in the workplace that their personal life and their business life are separate is over, because people carry incredible amounts of strain from either one side or the other into each relationship they're busy with. And so in the change management, we're breaking the fabric down to business culture. How do we, be real, be human, be specific, and be real? And how do we support our employees or our business, executives on both sides of the spectrum, given their personal lives do matter and their business lives do require a certain amount of output. And so that's just the fascination for myself. Obviously later when I'm given that slot to talk, I have a personal story of a very bad mental breakdown, very bad breakdown at the peak of one of my business scaling projects at 125 staff, and built quite a big business, and I hit a brick wall. So I know this value of taking time out, being in a healthy place. And we talk about this thing of filling your tank. So if you understand what the analogy there is, if you're running on empty in either your personal life or business life, you can't give anything to the people around you. And so how do we create healthy people with balance? We call it harmony now because it's hard to balance things. So in harmonized work environments where we have healthy output, healthy inputs, and just a real environment where we can be real with each other, real people. So that's where our fascination comes with this specific topic and working with it on a daily basis, not in our own businesses, but in everyone that we're busy helping at the moment.
Sure. Well, I think what I'm hearing all the panelists say, and Daniel, maybe just your words resonate with me, is that, you know, I really trust that from today, a few people can hear your story, and that people don't have to pay the same school fees, because you paid an expensive price, it sounds like it. And I don't think that's necessarily the heart of what we're trying to do. I think there's better ways to do things, and we certainly don't have to run ourselves ragged trying to achieve our goals and dreams. So I'm excited to hear all these different engagements. I want to encourage everybody on the webinar today. So means of engagement, I think people are always asking, well, there's panelists and they're saying things, and I want to have a chance to engage with them. So how we're going to do that is you'll see that there's a Q&A function if you have joined us on Zoom. So you'll be able to post questions to our panelists there, which we will then field. If you have joined us on Facebook, you will see that you'll be able to post comments, and we will look at those as questions and then pose that to the panelists. So it will be my privilege to facilitate today's session. Just the format on how we will be doing this is Marinus de Kock will be speaking first and giving an opening presentation on this idea of mental health and where that engages with business. Anita Craig will be following him with her 10-minute part, and then Daniel will be closing that section for us, after which we will then start to field Q&A from the questions that we will be receiving from the audience. So if the audience wants to ask us some questions and put them into the chat so that we can start looking at those and that we can start ordering those in a manner that we can articulate them well to the panelists. You're welcome also to say who specifically the question is posed, and then we'll be handling the Q&A. But I'm very excited to share the space with you today and for us to get better equipped with working with mental health in our business space. So Marinus, if you're ready, I'm going to hand over to you and give you a chance just to engage us on this topic and hopefully give us a few tips, share with us some of your experiences within this space. Thanks, Marinus. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Harry, and an absolute pleasure to take us away here this afternoon. So you and I spoke just last week on the podcast of you know, how we use coaching in our business to support mental health and people in their relationships. And we've all seen how work can impact on our relationships and our mental health. And I'm sure most of us can argue that most of us need to perhaps look at ourselves and our relationships a bit better than we are. And like Daniel set us up quite nicely by saying, maintaining that harmony instead of a balance, which isn't always possible. So in terms of the collision, when I started preparing for today, that word collision hit me, and I thought, where does mental health and work really collide? And it is really at the point of mental illness, isn't it? So it's not my specialty as industrial psychologist to diagnose or treat mental illness, but like I said earlier, we usually get called where the collision has already happened. And again, in the workplace, in terms of my own business, I also need to be aware of these kinds of factors. So I thought to start today by painting us a picture of mental wellness and mental illness in South Africa and in the workplace. I know we do have an international audience, but I do want to focus a bit on some things at home. And then from there, I'd like to set up the conversation for how do we deal with mental illness in the workplace? Why is it so hard? And how can we make the start of the conversation slightly easier? Now, to start with my picture of the state of mental wellness in South Africa, you will not be surprised that I'm not here to paint a pretty picture today. In fact, a very recent Mental State of the World report identified South Africa as the lowest ranked country based on mental well-being, and also the younger generations their mental health has actually come up as a particular point of concern. Of all the respondents in the survey that were from South Africa, a fifth of them actually noted that they are experiencing very real and constant states of fear and anxiety. Again, no surprises with the fact that the COVID-19 pandemic has created some problems in terms of mental health. Interestingly, the study, and moving back to the international audience, the study actually confirmed that from 2019 to 2021, the decline in mental well-being on an international level actually correlated very strongly with three things. Number one, the stringency of government COVID-19 measures, and also the number of cases and the number of deaths per million. Then focusing on our youth, again, no surprises, four factors that compound mental illness and create mental wellness issues for our youth. Four things: income inequality, political instability, factors relating to being an internet-based society, and then environmental toxins. At home again, the South African Depression and Anxiety Group has actually also released some scary numbers last year, saying that in the first 9 months of 2021, they received more than 466,000 calls, which is an increase of 47% on 2020. And the suicide helpline received more than 85,500 calls. So they say they're fielding about 2,200 calls a day. And suicidal thoughts and these kinds of things are obviously very prevalent in what they are hearing. And South Africa currently seeing about 23 suicides a day. Moving over to a picture of mental illness and mental illnesses in our country. And these figures are obviously a bit worse in South Africa based on what we just heard. We won't be surprised. But internationally, they might be only slightly lower. In terms of the general population here, about 30% of us will experience a mental disorder that meets diagnostic criteria once in our lifetime. And then also a similar percentage, as far as I know, of us will also experience symptoms of mental illness that don't meet diagnostic criteria, but are nonetheless very relevant and needed to deal with. Just over 11% of our population will actually experience 2 or more mental disorders in their lifetime. And in terms of who is struggling with a mental illness at the moment, our 12-month prevalence, that's people who have been diagnosed with a mental disorder or with mental illness in the last year, sitting about 16.5%, and globally it's about 15%. Bringing it back to the workplace, that means in my company, where we're 46 people, myself included, easily 13 people, if we apply the statistics, easily 13 people will suffer from a mental disorder in their lifetime. The most common categories of mental disorders are the first 3 are anxiety disorders. Those are the most common. Substance abuse, of which alcohol abuse is the most prevalent, is a close second. And then your mood disorders come in at about 10% of those diagnosed. Yes, substance abuse is a mental illness. It is diagnosed as such, and as we know, that is a very, very serious problem. In terms of the severity of mental illness, about 26% of those diagnosed with mental illness are classified as severe. Moderate will be about 31%, and mild about 43%. Coming back again to my own company, applying these statistics means that I will employ about 3 or 4 people who will suffer from a severe mental illness at some point in their lifetime. What's very scary is the treatment gap that we're sitting with here in South Africa. Only 1 in 4 of people who suffer from mental illness ever get treatment. And obviously resources, especially at the community level, promoting recovery and wellness, those things are problematic in South Africa. And then again, on the matter of inequality, again, 84% of South Africans rely on the public healthcare system. Now, of our government's total healthcare budget, only 5% is spent on mental health. And coincidentally, that is comparatively less than elsewhere in the world. Another statistic on top of this that's quite scary. Remember, I said 84% of South Africans depend on the public healthcare system. The remaining 16% who also don't always get from their medical aid the coverage for mental health issues that they need, though they are privileged enough to have access to private healthcare. They spend as much, that 16%, as much as the entire national budget for healthcare on healthcare. So just to give you an idea of the disparity, the 16% of our population who use private healthcare spend as much money as the government spends on everyone else. And that's scary for me. And that's a problematic picture that South Africa's sitting here with the lowest mental health score, and that we're also struggling in terms of the infrastructure and policy framework that is required to treat that. Going over into what this means for us in the workplace. Now, as I said, in my own company, I'm very likely to encounter someone struggling from a severe mental illness, and mental illness is uncomfortable to deal with in any context, more so at work. And why I say that is that it's very clear for us that these conversations are usually troublesome and are kind of discussed in hushed tones, when someone is suffering from a mental illness. Of course, in the workplace, and Harry, maybe you and I should set up a completely different discussion for this, so you can have 45 minutes to an hour on the legal and ethical implications of disclosure of mental illness and these kinds of things, which does become complicated.
Yeah.
Today, I just want to focus though on why this conversation is hard for us to have. And I believe that it is simply because we don't see mental illness in the same light or the same as a physical health condition. And there's often a lot of shame attached to it. So I'd like to use a fairly obvious and simple example to illustrate this. If someone, for example, were to be involved in a motor vehicle accident or something and they broke their leg, and then come to work, it would be very obvious for the rest of the people there what's wrong. Their symptoms are manifesting in their body as and it's clear to everyone, as with many physical conditions. You can see they're walking maybe with a cast and crutches. You know that the cast is going to come off at some point and they're going to be, the leg's going to be fine again. And then it's also easy and rather rewarding to support this person. You're going to hold the door open for them. You're going to carry their stuff. And it's very clear that it's not their choice that they are suffering from this ailment. Contrast that, for example, with where the same person would develop post-traumatic stress disorder from this kind of incident. And the symptoms, instead of manifesting in their body, manifesting their mood and their behavior, and it also affects your relationship with them. So now when they're tired and irritable and struggling to maintain motivation, it's very easy to attribute these kinds of things to their attitude or to their personality or to their character. So we easily say someone is lazy or difficult, and we also blame them for these kinds of symptoms that they're showing. So I'd like to, before signing off, with a couple of tips in terms of having a conversation and supporting someone who's struggling with mental illness in a non-intrusive and a non-judgmental way. Just leave our viewers with a challenge of what kind of stigma am I attaching to something so common and normal and treatable as mental illness, and how am I making it more difficult for people to disclose that they're struggling with mental illness, and then also deal with it effectively. So wrapping up, a quick 8 tips for you guys. When talking to someone with a issue related to mental illness, it's good to have a private discussion with no distractions. Create an open and non-judgmental space for them to talk to you. And by that I mean, tip number 2, let them share as much or as little as they want. So don't pressure them to tell you things that they aren't ready to talk about. Thirdly, don't diagnose or second guess what they're telling you. You're not a medical expert. Don't make assumptions or provide them with tips or solutions or things that they need to do. The best thing to do is to just ask open-ended questions and give the person time to respond to them. So instead of saying something like, I can see you feeling very down, or something like that, say to them, how are you feeling? How is that for you? And create a space for them to color in. When you talk to them about self-care, it's good to talk about ways of de-stressing it and practicing it, exercising, healthy diet, good sleep patterns, and that kind of thing. But again, don't push these things onto them as remedies for their ill health. Ask them what they think would be helpful and how you can support them. Listen carefully to them. Don't tell them that you understand or you know exactly what they're feeling or take over the conversation to you. They just want to see that you are trying to understand and support them. Offer them help in seeking professional advice and help them with information where needed. Perhaps you can help them talk to a friend or family member, but again, you are not supposed to be taking control of their decisions. And then also know your limits. You are, again, not necessarily a medical healthcare practitioner, and supporting someone also will have an impact on you. So give yourself time to process what's happened and what they've told you, and help the person rely on a network for support rather than just you becoming their kind of a savior in some way. Anyway, so that's just a very quick overview from my side. Quite a rough picture in terms of mental health globally, but especially in South Africa. And then creating a situation where these kinds of awkward situations will come up, but with understanding why perhaps it will be awkward and how to deal with it a bit better, we could open up that space and just provide people with the support they need.
Sure, Marinus, that was a profound opening act. I don't know if that's the right word. Opening presentation is probably right, because it's certainly no act. It's quite serious, the scenario that we are faced with. I am going to try and hold back on my questions, and I see there's a couple of questions that have come through on Facebook and in our chat. So just to everybody that's attending again, if you have questions, if Marinus has stirred some questions in you and you want answers, we're going to try. And as Marinus said, we'll try to answer some of them. But yeah, some scary statistics to realize that this is a crucial part of your business. Anita, can we hand over to you to help us further dive into this issue?
Thank you. I'm going to share a screen, if that's okay with people. There's a few things that I'd like to talk through on the screen. Is that available for me to do?
Yes, you can.
Hi guys, are you able to see okay?
Yep, we've got good visual there.
Okay, great, thank you. So I'm not going to repeat many of the statistics, the phenomenal statistics that my co-panelist Marinus shared with us there. And thank you for that grounding in the conversation. It's certainly made me feel very sober. It's a very sobering subject. And my intention today is hopefully also to cast some light into this, to give people a feeling that, out of the despair and the darkness, there is hope and there are pathways out. And I think one of the big experiences that I myself have been experiencing in this last 3-year stretch, leading into COVID itself, coming out of COVID, and I've seen a lot of people as well, is this thing of burnout. And one of the things today that I'm wanting to just focus on is, what are the warning signs that we can start to locate within ourselves and others around us, this thing of, what's really going on for me, and having a look at some of the symptoms that could include a reduced immunity to illness. As our stress and cortisol levels go up in our system, it reduces our body's best chance of actually warding off and protecting itself. Fatigue, exhaustion, insomnia, these are all 3 big things that a lot of people face. And, part of the self-care program is something as basic as sleep hygiene. Panic attacks, more and more common these days. Feelings of anger and irritability, this general sense of feeling hopeless or a loss of enjoyment in life, where everything suddenly life can feel and taste bland, tasteless. There's no joy left in one's life. Really down to depression on various different levels, and possibly even to the suicidal ideation. And here, thanks to At the Present Psychologist for this infographic, there's really a great illustration, although the subject isn't great, but the 12 stages of the development cycle or experience that you may possibly go through in this mental health declining spiral energetically. And this isn't a linear progression, and you may find yourself and locate yourself in one or a couple or more of these different stages. But what is important to realize is looking at the picture, and just asking oneself the question, do I identify with any of these stages of burnout, all the way down through to a full burnout experience? Then, to Marinus's point, it's a new era for mental health at work. And today, there's a call out from my heart to leaders, is your responsibility as much as is possible within your capacity to provide care and emotional support in conversations you're having with your teams and your employees. And a call out to organizations, a responsibility here where we're all part of this ecosystem and we each have a part to play, is helping to create environments where your employees can survive and thrive. And I think that's where this collision or this cooperation with mental health and work, if we're going to reframe the conversation, there's the individual, there's the leaders, there's the community, and there's the organization and the system itself that can each play a part in helping to find that new homeostasis and harmony for the betterment of all. And, so I was looking at just some recent work published in Harvard Business Review and on LinkedIn this month, and different authors and speakers and voices out there, because March is the month for mental health. And one of the cruxes of the issues is we now need to talk about this, and how do we hold an emotionally intelligent and an emotionally supportive conversation. And very often it's about the conversation we probably really are least wanting to actually have with someone, because it can be the most tricky conversation. And including myself, at times I feel like, what do I actually say? But sometimes just being honest about that in itself can be helpful. So here are just some comparisons, around what does it look like to be emotionally dismissive in a conversation? How do we shine the light of consciousness on that? Some dismissive phrasing. How do we stop ourselves from, or at least recognizing ourselves from, when we minimize conversations or minimize another person's situation? How do we not negate somebody else's experience, especially when it's a lived, direct experience, it's their reality, and not to negate what they could be going through or what they're stating they are going through? How do we stop immediately jumping to prescribing solutions? So the fix it. We all want to maybe step in and fix something immediately, but it's not as simple as that, this conversation, this topic. And toxic positivity, which may sound like, just look at the bright side, where we again negate the pain, the actual valid pain of this experience, and shift it to something that is more emotionally supportive, which could look like just simply validating the person's experience, its acknowledgement in its basic essence. It's seeing them and hearing them. And then getting curious, seeking to understand the other person's world viewpoint, their reality, and suspending one's judgment. And then guiding emotional and physical support. When someone's struggling, you might ask, how best can I support you right now? Or what would be helpful to you right now? So bringing in some very simple but powerful coaching work here. Asking the person, empowering them to help think through the solution for themselves, of them being able to identify what is most useful for them in that moment. And then offering specific support. I often find that the grounded, practical, specific support really helps a person to orient themselves into a specific way that's going to help them from A to B, even if it's just in that moment and space, in time, in the workplace. And then inviting perspective instead of prescribing a solution. As Marina said, we are not the mental health specialists, so avoid jumping in there, but inviting the perspective that you can be there to offer, but if they're not ready to receive your offering, then again, don't jump in there. It's not about us, it's about that other person. And acknowledging and appreciating them for them taking you into their confidence, into their safe space, for them going vulnerable and being authentic, and just being sensitive to that and appreciating them for bringing you into their reality and for entrusting them with the information. So emotional supportiveness in action, in a nutshell here. It's not our job to heal the other person, but to make it a safe space for them to share and to process or provide whatever support we can that's in your capacity and appropriateness to do so. Okay, so this is, if people are interested in reading more about the article that I've just been summarizing, here is a code that you can just, a QR code that you're welcome to snap and read the full article, the Harvard Business Review article. Harry, even happy if we want to paste the link to that article afterwards to your audience as well, if that's useful, if people like to take a deeper dive into the subject. Mm-hmm. So, sorry, I'm just trying to move my screen around here. I'm just struggling to navigate these pages. Just bear with me 1 second. Oh dear, okay, let me try a different way. Here we go. So for me, I'd like to invite everyone at this point just to return back to oneself, because that's what is the most powerful tool that we have to work with. If we ourselves are in the situation of struggling with mental health in the workplace and having a hard time, And just a simple quote, the true power is living the realization that you are your own healer, hero, and leader. And really, for me, it's about asking yourself and turning the conversation inwards to what relationship to your mental wellness do you want to attend to? And what is your current state of mental well-being? Because as soon as you can locate yourself in your current reality and face that, then we can start to get into the curiosity of, where do we want to go with that? So just asking oneself that question and taking a moment just to locate yourself into what is your current state of mental well-being. You might want to use a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the optimal, and 1 being, you're really down in the ditch, you're in a crisis point. And again, just being aware of your own internal narrative, not to over-dramatize anything and not to minimize a situation or a context either. And reminding ourselves that we're all works in progress. For me and the work that I'm doing in innerFlow, it's about when you redirect your energy, which is in motion all the time, you can redirect your life. So no matter how difficult or troublesome or negative your situation is right now, understand that you can work with it and get support and get help. And shifting things and shifting one's paradigm and empowering yourself and equipping yourself with a team of people to support you, you will be able to redirect your life into a better place. So I hope that you'll always be able to hold the lighthouse in front of you and know that even though you feel like you might be on the ocean about to collide into the rocks, there is that shore that you're going to be able to step onto solid footing. And it's just about how do we navigate and what do you need to focus on and prioritize in your life to make those fundamental life choices for yourself to get into a better place. And so the next question is identifying for yourself, what do you need to prioritize and or change and or let go of in your life that may no longer be serving you? And in this question, it's useful to understand it not just from the place of your mindset, but actually, how does your head, your heart, which is your feeling center, your hands or your gut, which is your action center, as well as your soul, your intuition, operate inside of you? And how do they operate in your personal, private world, and how do they operate in your work life? And is there a difference? Is there a splitting off? Because that's also important. Or is it quite integrated that the person who you show up as in your personal life and in your work life is one and the same? Do you try and divorce the two? Are you struggling in one and maybe suppressing it in another reality? So just actually opening that up and having a good look inside to see what's going on there, it will help to inform this picture and how it impacts you in terms of how you show up in business and work. And if you're a leader, how that impacts your subordinates. And how do you become conscious then? Once you've located it in yourself, how do you become conscious of these operating in the system around you and the system of others in both healthy and unhealthy ways? So these are some key questions for you to be asking yourself and to take away after this webinar and just work at them. So once we have this heightened or awakened awareness in us, then we can get to, planning out some actions and what your next step might be towards aligning these for a much more integrated identity, for a much more integrated sense of wellness, which is where my curiosity comes and my interest in coming and working and supporting people comes into being, because it's about how do we then work with your sustained well-being. So again, locating yourself in these 3 questions, maybe there's one thing that you feel you most need to attend to. It might be something that you do on your own. It might be a vital conversation that you need to have with someone close to you. It could be a boss, a spouse, a co-worker, a mental health professional that you feel you really need to turn to, etc., etc. Only you will know what that thing is that you are prioritizing at the top of your list. But at least once you've got to identify, then you can start to take a constructive action around that. And then again, another empowering question is, if you're a leader in an organization, what is your personal contribution going to be to your own health? Firstly, it's like putting that oxygen mask on in the airplane. First, put your mask on before helping your fellow passengers. And then what is it going to be to the group or the organization that you belong? And again, just an inspirational quote. Her rebirth was stunning. She lifted herself up from the depths of despair, grasped her dreams, embedded them in her heart, and walked forward into a future that only her will and vision could control. So I leave you with that. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Anita. And it's always encouraging for me to look at the approach and see that Marina's was speaking about the workplace and yourself was speaking about the individual. And I often wonder if we as individuals operate from an empty cup, meaning that I myself am in that 12th stage of burnout. How am I able to help others who are in that space? So I think it really starts with us as leaders to be able to say and look at myself and say, am I healthy? Am I operating from a good space before attempting to help others? I think it's possible, but certainly making your life a lot more harder trying to do it from an empty space. So that introspection is needed. Anita, thank you for sharing that. I see some questions are coming up. Daniel, I'm going to hand over to you and ask you to close us out with these opening presentations, and looking forward to hearing you talk on this topic.
Thanks, Harry, and thanks, Anita. Thanks, Marinus. Really have set the stage for me. I'm going to keep it a little bit more lighter-hearted, more personality-based. Not that yours wasn't. I just always get the graveyard shift, Harry. Thanks for that. The last speaker. So just to keep the guys on the end of their seats. I love to engage with a bit of a personal story. I think it's always helpful just to give context. So we really work with business integration, help you go to the next level. We've scaled many small businesses to large businesses, help people with startups. And each business in its phase has different stress levels. When you're starting up, your hours are stretched because you're doing everything in your business. You don't know what you don't know. You're needing someone to hold your hand. And so we do a lot of these hand-holding exercises with one-man business to help you see that you need to be a little more than yourself as you grow into a team. We do your medium enterprise business, where business is kind of plateaued and it's not going backwards, it's not going forwards. It's just kind of hit its ceiling. And we obviously work there in integration and culture development change and help you grow if you want to. And then we obviously work with very big business, and how do you scale a business and not burn out? So I think the common thread with Anita and Marinus today, this thing of burnout is real. So let me tell you a bit of a story, because I love coming into business and we get involved. I demoted myself 2-3 years ago from the chief executive officer to the chief excitement officer. So I fired myself from the top floor, came back downstairs and got excited with the team, and worked very much from the center of the business than from the top of the business down. So we think a little bit differently. I'm happy for Harry to post obviously one of the links to what we do if he sees fit. Obviously didn't want to punt my brand today, but rather just let's talk about mental illness. So my brother and I started our first business 20 years ago in our garage. That one-man story built a very large brokerage over a period of 15 years. And we scaled the business probably too quickly. in that specific content, grew very quickly to having a lot of overheads, a lot of staff, and not much time to look back and wonder what had happened. And I hit a brick wall myself with mental illness. I had a burnout. These are very, very real. If you've had one, it is not a nice place to be. It is a horrible black hole to get out of. And if you're in a position where pressure can't be taken off and you don't have help around you, you really are stuck. And maybe a bit of a message of hope today that you can get unstuck. So I was admitted into a clinical psychologist's room, and I'm obviously not a psychiatrist myself. So I want to let you know that there's so many different mechanisms you're going to need in a time of burnout, and don't downplay any of them. You know, from looking at your emotional wellness, as Anita so well put for us there today, and then getting help from someone like Marinus. You need a team around you to help. And then excited guys like us to help you with the culture and the pressure. So what happened is I hit this wall. I couldn't get out of bed for three to 4 weeks. With all good intention, I had an amazing doctor working with me who wrote a script every day, because one thing fixes something and then something else falls out of place. And there's a lot of integration when you're working in the space. My adrenals were burnt out. I didn't have a personality left. I was just a broken individual. Broken at home, broken at work, broken. And so I find myself a few months later on up to something like 16 different meds to help me get out of bed in the morning, and lost my passion for life, lost my passion for the business. The thing that used to drive me and my motivation became my absolute nightmare. And so then I started making a lot of mistakes, putting the wrong structures in place, getting help in the wrong places. And eventually I had to make a decision. It was my life or it was that world. And I had to downscale. I had to get out of certain things, downscale from various amounts of entities at the time to what I'm doing now, and a little bit more focused. But a 7-year journey of holding a lot of people's hands to get healing and health back. And I don't think you ever fully recover, but you get wise. You get a bit of wisdom. Life teaches us a bit of wisdom. And so I really can see on the scale of when we do assessments in business where you are. We also make use of various psychometric assessments and stress test your business and yourself. And like I said, we really come alongside. We hold people's hands. We get really involved in this process, because people are incredibly diverse and unbelievable creatures. You know, we are the asset in our business. We believe that without people, I don't think you can be successful. If you're a bottom-driven line business and you're only there to make money, I can't imagine too many people want to hang around you. So we really bring in this thing of the love of people. And I just saw, I didn't only hurt myself when I burnt out, I hurt everyone around me. Having 125 staff and seeing that thing start to fall apart, not being able to hold the pressure, not being able to lead the leaders and give them what they needed, and having to take a step back, take a step out to heal and then come back in. And now rebuilding a completely different way. We've got different modulars in place for ourselves as leaders. We're sitting on 5 to 7 companies again now as a group, in our own internal structures, never mind what we're helping on the outside. And really, we've got to learn to have fun. I've learned to smile again. I've learned to accept humanity, my humanity, everyone's humanity around me. I think the biggest fallout in life comes when we have missed expectations. And so I am the leader in the business. I'm not Christ. Okay, I have a faith. My healing came a lot through faith and finding out who I am and realizing what my purpose was. And I've got very strong beliefs, but I don't want to, no, we're not pushing that today on this forum. But I just want to say this: if you are on this journey and you're not in a good place, I think there's been a beautiful perspective painted for us today on this panel. I'm looking forward to the questions get asked now, but let's be real. Life is tough. COVID has put challenges on myself and my clients and caused us to be innovative. I've seen a lot of people shut down. We've unfortunately lost a few people who ended their lives, and that is so sad. So if you're in that place, I just want to motivate you that you can still be excited about the future. There's still something left for you to do. There's still purpose for your life, and you need to find a way You need to grab outside of yourself, hold on to somebody and get help, because your life's not worth it. There's nothing that the people around you facing you, ending it or collapsing, it doesn't help anyone really at the end of the day. But I want to just encourage you out there today. I'm now 42, and after 7 years of healing from burnout, my functionalities in my body are back. I still seek counsel. I still have medical advice and support. And so really it's not something that we religiousize, but rather that we walk out as human beings, as individuals, to make sure that we're harmonized, is what I said earlier. We have a personal life, we have families, I believe, we have friends, and having that balance. So just ending in these 6 spheres of our lives. We look at how you're doing in your personal life. We're looking at how you're doing in your friendship circles. We're looking at how you're doing in your work environment. We're looking at how you're doing in the levels of values, what your belief system is. And then, of course, what is your social interaction? Because if you're helping other people, it's very difficult to get caught up on your own hang-ups and your own space. And so if you start becoming well harmonized, a well-rounded individual, and you have support structures around you in more one form or a fashion, and you're seeking to do the best you can because you want to be healthy for yourself and others, I think there's hope out there for all of us. So thanks for letting me share that. I hope it was encouraging. Graveyard shift, I have to push the energy levels up and make sure you guys get excited about this thing of mental health, wellness, because we need to. It's real. We all suffer from stress. And if you don't, Nikki knocks behind your back, you're lying, because life is tough. So let's enjoy the journey because we're in it anyway. Thanks, Harry.
Daniel, you make me want to get up and do a happy dance. So thank you for just really taking us. I want to ask the panelists just to unmute themselves for a second. As I just gather my thoughts around the questions, there's been some questions asked. I want the panelists to please go around for a brief minute and just tell the folks at home and on the interwebs how they can get a hold of you, because I think you've unlocked a lot of information, and I think a lot of them would want to get in touch with you. So I'm going to go around the horn, and this time Daniel will let you go first, and then we'll go the other way around. So Daniel, how can people get a hold of you and find out more about the work you're doing?
Harry, that's easy. So my name's difficult, so I don't know how easy it is. So you can just go and Google Daniel Dabrowski. We've got a lot of online platforms, but to keep it simple and easy, I'll type it for you. It's ICH, Integrity, Courage, and Honor. So ICH Group, Pty Limited. You can go check us out there. We're on LinkedIn, we're on Facebook, we're on TikTok and everything else out there, because we have demographics from 18 to 65 that we're working with. So yeah, I'll post it there for you now, but just reach out to us. We take calls. We get back to you as quickly as we can. I have an email address called Believe, that's BELIEVE @ICHgroup.co.za. So we want to believe in you, believe in us to help you. Just send us a message on Believe.
Good. Thanks very much, Daniel. Anita, how can people get a hold of you, and also just a brief description about what you do?
Great, thank you. Yeah, so I've typed in the chat the 2 websites that you can go and look at. For the conscious leadership work, it's Future Leaders of the World. I do a lot of work in change management arenas, helping organizations and teams, executive coaching, etc. And innerFlow is the work that I've personalized during this time of COVID to really help with this personal transformational space at much deeper levels. So when people are looking for the richer journey, want to do retreats, workshops, that kind of work, you can find me on innerflow.co.za.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Anita. Marinas?
Very simple for me, camino.co.za. I'm happy to be part of a fantastic team of psychologists and organizational development practitioners. And all of the work I'm doing in this field, I'm very proudly doing with the team over there. Camino.co.za, and I have put it in the chat as well.
Thank you very much. I'm just typing in the chat quickly that we will be sending a recording of today and that'll also have all the information. If you've registered for today's Zoom event, you can also then receive the recording. We'll be sending that out for you to able to distribute if you feel this has been of value. If you have not registered for this event and you are on Facebook, please look out for the link. We will be posting that again for you to access. If you want to reach out to us, it's info@unashamedlyethical.com. That is our email address, info@unashamedlyethical.com. Let's transition to some questions. Daniel, a question to you, sir, has been posed. Daniel, can you please say more about how you resolved your past issues through identity discovery?
Yeah, Harry, that's something I'm really passionate about, is be yourself. In the world of business, because that's what we're contextualizing today in mental wellness, we have a massive spirit of comparison. And a spirit of comparison brings in a lack of gratitude and contentment with where we are. And so continually striving for more and getting into the cycle of success, as we've been taught what success is, to be financially well off. And we get that out of harmony in our lives, and we chase finances adverse having some form of a balanced lifestyle. And so for me, I had to stop trying to be somebody else because that person is already taken. I had to stop the comparison because I'm not like everyone else. If we look at the panel today, I value my panelists who are with me today, but we're very different. And I think that's the beauty of life, that you need diversity and you need to appreciate your diversity. And so for me, it took a long time to realize who I was. I obviously said that I have a massive faith journey and discovering a belief in a power higher than myself. And I'm obviously a Christian. So that was massive for me in terms of settling my identity, because I know who I am in terms of what the Bible says about me. So that would be my viewpoint on it. But then massively is just to be content that, you know what, there is no one else that can do what you do. And we really focus on building a team and putting other people around us and not living in a world of insecurity, trying to do everything ourselves, push our views down through everything that we do. And so I think it's a broad question, and it requires a lot of working out what you're supposed to be doing with your life, but happy to discuss it further with you if you want to. Thanks, Harry.
Thanks for that, Daniel. And Anita, a question to you. The 12 stages of burnout has triggered a lot of people. There's been a lot of comments, people are asking about that. That's obviously a monitoring and evaluation almost. You know, where do I find myself? Now, what advice do you have for people that are in that space of saying, well, maybe I did start my business in the Industrial Revolution and emotional availability wasn't a thing back then. How do I transition? What advice do you have for people in that space?
Thanks. Yeah, it's a really interesting conversation. I'm going to take it to a personal situation where I've been mentoring some young people between the age of 25 and 28. And the one guy in particular has a father who is now in his 70s. So there's massive generational difference between the two of them. And he's brought to me, you know, the interpersonal, intergenerational context of their relationship. They actually stay in the same house together. So, you know, they're living in close quarters. And I can see the pain on both ends, you know, and that they're just crossing and talking over each other all the time. Yet both of them in their hearts can honestly actually feel into each other's worlds. And that for me would be one of the starting points. Is it's not wrong where you're located in life, whatever generational area of your life you find yourselves in, whatever life context you're in that for a reason. And often it's to learn certain lessons in that context. We've come here to master certain things, to grow. There are no mistakes. It's really about what is being reflected at you and what are some of the questions that maybe you need to start to pose about that situation to get curious about, call it the other side. Because like a coin, there's always two sides to a situation to make it a 360 degree or a full rounded perspective. So that would be my first thing, is try and stand in that other person's shoes or that other generational. Understand, what is that generation motivated by? Why will they do certain things or won't do certain things? If it's your business, what are the things that you need to change and adapt to meet the audience or your ideal customers and target audience that you're now servicing in the world? How do you speak into that with, their language? So it's really about crossing these divides. And curiosity, emptying yourself from being full of knowledge to saying, actually, how can I get curious and learn something about this? And bring some playfulness to it as well. That would be my suggestion for that one.
Sure, Anita, that's so good. I think that ties in with what Daniel was saying. There's a level of this where we need to remember to have fun. I want to ask Marinus this question that's been posed to the panelists. How should I assist a fellow colleague who have a tendency to latch onto work, want to be busy the whole time, feeling insecure when not working, resulting in the neglect of their own health? How do we support such a person?
So, that is actually a hard one to answer, mainly for the reason because it depends on the person and a number of factors and where they are kind of in terms of the stages of burnout and these kinds of things. Going back to my presentation earlier, I would just encourage, and this is the one tool I kind of have to give to anyone in any situation when dealing with people. And that is to just ask open-ended questions. So a really well-timed and well-worded question can trigger the type of thinking for that person to take a conversation further in terms of exploring how this is happening and what the extent of it is and what really the way forward is. Going into that kind of a process that Anita showed us, for them to really start exploring where's their mental well-being, what do they need to change or prioritize, or that kind of thing. But personally, and again, that person is the owner of their life and their career. But personally, I would try to land a question such as, I notice you're working very, very hard. What do you get out of it? Or just opening up the conversation and then shutting up to allow the person to fill the space in order to engage that thinking, and also to just be supportive of them in general. But apart from that, that is typically or very frequently a situation where someone like myself ends up getting involved in a coaching capacity or some kind of capacity like that. But long before that, it would be a kind friend lending an ear rather than an opinion or advice.
Marinus, a follow-up question to that to some degree is that the Tandiwe says that often business leaders or owners are scared to open this can of worms around mental health, simply because they do not know how to deal with it. What would be your advice for business leaders, business owners, managers that are saying, I know that this thing is boiling underneath the surface in our workplace? How can we meaningfully, sustainably make mental health awareness and access to mental health help be more accessible? Have you got any advice in that space to make mental health assistance more accessible?
Well, mental health is also a bit of a buzzword, so a lot of companies do little workshops and these kinds of things and sessions and that kind of thing. And a lot of that is nice and helpful. But to get to the crux of the question, someone saying, I don't want to open the can of worms. And then you're also saying, but it's beneath the surface. Beneath the surface, the can is open. As per the statistics that are shared, people struggling with mental illness, not just burnout and stress, that's also there. But serious mental illness is probably sitting in your company already, and the symptoms are coming across in kind of hidden ways. absenteeism, unexplained sick leave, this kind of thing. It's there already. So apart from creating the space where someone feels safe to be able to share, listen here, this is what I'm sitting with. When you say awareness, it all starts with awareness. But I would challenge by saying, how aware are you to start with? knowing that this is a challenge and this is an issue, step number one. But step number two is, what is your attitude towards it? Mm-hmm. So I'd like to kind of respond with a question while Anita's cat is joining our discussion. I was not aware that there was another panelist who still had to speak. What I would just like to challenge our audience with is, imagine the kind of scenario where a subordinate or an employee of yours comes to you saying, I suffer from major depressive disorder or something like that. How do you respond? How do you actually support that person? And then on the other side of the scale, how do you simply respond when someone says, listen, the workload's getting a bit much for me, I don't feel like I'm coping? What does that bring up for you? What is your response to that? What is your attitude, and what are the underlying stories that you're sitting with in your mind when you're approached by something like this? And the real litmus test for us in terms of how we see these things and how we would be willing to approach it, I would also challenge our audience with, imagine you are interviewing a candidate for a position and they happen to disclose in the interview that they've had an ongoing struggle with mental illness, or that they have suffered from burnout before, or that kind of thing. I'm going to leave it there, because that's the thought that you need to start with, is what does this open up for me? What is my first response? And then after that, we can go with how do we actually support a person? The kind of conversation that we've spoken about today is good. You can certainly do initiatives to promote mental health, but starting with yourself as a leader in terms of your attitude and your approach to it, for me, that is the first.
Good. Daniel, a question to you from Jason. Jason says, Daniel, you obviously wouldn't want to stop the wave of success when you were riding it, when you were scaling your organization. He asks, so how would you do it differently next time? Because the wave of success is going to come past you, then I'll park the wave and stop and deal with your issues. Or how would you approach it this time if that season of success comes across your path again?
Ooh, love the question, bro. It's lucky to be this time of the day talking about these things, and I'm loving what's being said and what we're engaging with today. So how would I do it differently? Well, I think there's a healthy growth rate in every single business. So one of the measures I put in place and look at, guys, why do you want to grow? Why are you going where you want to go? And it's getting to the why. Your personal why and your business why. Okay? Because there's an incredible saying that my godfather and I have, and we built some crazy businesses together, that turnover is just reflecting your ego. So we're always at a party and the guy says, I'm doing $1 billion rand turnover, and that's fantastic. And then we go look at the cash books and we look at what our profit looks like. And if we're making profit, there's a form of sanity that helps with personal stress, because your business is covering its costs, its overheads. And then, of course, we have this incredible thing called cash flow. And that is always our reality. And so you need to go and ask yourself why. So I was building for the wrong reasons, I suppose. We had a 95 almost % growth curve. So we were doubling nearly every year on year. And the business just could not sustain. Your cash flows can't sustain the growth. And I was ambitious. I was 30 years old and going at it flat out. So I think I'm a bit older and wiser, and my adrenals speak to me on a weekly basis. So I look at growth rates of a business, and I help you work out what's healthy for you as an individual in the business, for your team, for the finances of the business, for the success of your reach and your clientele, because breaking costs a lot more than rather holding back. So I love guys that are passionate. I love ambition. Don't get me wrong. If you want to take over the whole world, I'm your guy, but I'm going to help you do it in bite-sized chunks so that you don't die in the process, because a lot of my friends who've achieved so much in life are spending their money on health-related issues. Yeah. And if that's your end game, then by all means continue on your crazy spree. So to answer the question, just in finality, every business is different. Every individual is different, but a lot of our brokenness in identity and even in stress-related things at the office gives us our why. And a lot of us are building for the wrong reason, unfortunately. And our teams and our health pay the price at the end of the day. So if you're having to prop yourself up on a whole bunch of meds to keep the pace, and I'm not speaking against medication, I'm not a doctor, I'm just saying, why are you propping yourself up? Where's something's not functioning well within your world, and you better find a way to address it. And I love what Anita spoke about earlier. And just to bring this home for you, because I believe this very strongly, and it's my personal belief. Anita spoke about your personal world and your business world. One fundamental change I made is I had a business life and a personal life. And my business life was overemphasized. And that muscle, if you'd like to say, in this left arm of mine, my bicep was pumping. But my personal life was taking the brunt. My kids weren't seeing me. My wife wasn't seeing me. I was drinking way too much back on those days. I was taking medication to cope with stress. I was finding all these mechanisms, and my personal life was a wreck, whilst my business life looked successful on the outside. And so if you look at what we're building now, that fundamental change is this: we only have one life. So while we're integrating into business, we allow you into our personal space, into our workspace, into our community space, into our social development space, into our values-based proposition space. And we're saying, guys, we're the same person. And that double life, that tension between living a double life, is the thing that breaks at the end of the day, because you can't. It's impossible for a human being. And it came from someone very high up in leadership a few years ago. I won't mention his name, who said, what you found me doing in my personal time has got nothing to do with you. And so we started to develop this double life, if you want to call it that. And I know we have two lives, and I know at work you've got to be professional. I'm not downplaying that, but you're one person. And so what we're building is unique, because you're just going to get one of us with our faults, our failures, and our incredible strengths. We know what we're good at, and we know what we are not good at. And I think that's a fundamental realization to come to.
Sure. That's good, Daniel. I think there's a book out there called Balanced on Purpose. And I think what I'm hearing a few of you saying is that we have to answer this question about purpose and what do you value. For sure, if you value profit over anything else, that will have implications for your business. If you value fun over everything else, that'll have implications for your business. And I'm not saying good or bad, but what you value will have an implication on your business. And I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to shamelessly plug Unashamedly Ethical for a second. And if you look at our 10 commitments, which is also on our website, those commitments that we say that if you are a part of Unashamedly Ethical, you're committing your life to ethics, values, and clean living. Those 10 commitments have been developed and designed by a global audience that says, what do we value? What do we value to see a future that we all want? And these 10 commitments are things that I think can help you define whether I'm on the right track or not. Because, I'll take a simple one, but the number 10 is to collaborate with our peers to impact our community and nation. Are you doing things like that? Are you taking ownership of those around you? I think these questions, these commitments often will bring out a bit of a monitoring and evaluation question about, hey, where am I? Where am I business? Are we healthy? Looking at my organizational health. We'll start to probe certain questions. So I want to really encourage everybody out there that's listening to really go and just reinvestigate those 10 values that you've signed up for and ask yourself, is that the values that I hold dear? And is that the values that my organization holds dear? So we are starting to land this plane, and I want to ask the panelists to maybe give one last comment before we then close today's session, and allow me to thank you all at that point in time. So I'm going to start with ladies first. Anita, do you want to just give a closing comment as we close today?
Thank you. I live next to Lanseria Airport, and as you made the analogy of landing the aeroplane, one flew overhead.
Awesome.
So it was, we live in a consciousness-based universe. It was perfect timing. So the one thing that we haven't spoken about on this call outwardly, but that I feel as soon as we engage deeper and deeper in a conversation here, because the intention's coming from the goodness of us as human beings to learn, share, support, and help each other, whether it's through our businesses, whether it's through a nonprofit, an organization such as UE, whether it's community-based, however it is, we're actually coming together from the song of our heart. That's what I'm starting to feel here. This conversation is really dropping into a heart-based conversation. And I just want to thank my co-panelists for that. The very powerful analogies that you've drawn and the things that you've shared with us, and Daniel, especially for your personal sharing and disclosure, it's just grounded the conversation. And what it does for me personally is it opens up my heart to more and more of humanity, and it allows the song of love. There's this exchange that's going on. And I believe that the portal to wholeness, wellness, recovery is in being able to hold it in that space, because we can get very fear-based in a conversation like this around mental health, especially when the statistics are posed at us, which we need as a wake-up call. Yet, one of the solving solutions is just working at it with wholehearted love. And that's really what I want to just say. Thank you to everyone. You've opened my heart even more to the situation that we face as humanity at large. I've learned and grown and shared just participating in this call. So huge gratitude to all of you.
Yeah, thanks for that. I think love is a key component, as it has this amazing ability to displace fear. Daniel.
Yeah, thanks, Anita, for that. Landing. Oh, I'm not a good lander. I like to stay in the air. I like to keep the plane flying. But this thing of your uniqueness, just a beautiful thing, your fingerprint is only one of a kind. Okay, no one shares your fingerprints. I live very close to a place called Val de Vie in Paul, and if I drive up to that gate and my fingerprint is not loaded on that system's biometric system, I ain't going in there. And let me just say that about you, your personality. You are the uniqueness expression of God's creation, because there is no one like you. There is no one on earth today that can express who you are as you can. And so we live in this incredible world of social media and comparison and competition, and we downplay how incredible we are. In your organization, only you can fulfill the role of expressing yourself. So my encouragement to everyone is I tell guys, you can live in this created world, or you can create your own world. And I really encourage guys to do that. Accept who you are. With all your blemishes, I am not a masterpiece of perfection. I'm a masterpiece of grace, and I'm a work in progress. So I'm nowhere near where I need to be, but I'm nowhere where I used to be. And isn't that how we should engage life? Are you at least on a journey? Be teachable. Allow people to walk into your life and point out your blind spots, and just get on with it, because we're a work in progress, broken vessels on the way to eternity. And I don't want to get deep, but just be real, be yourself. And if you want to, get a bit of excitement, go and come hang out with us. Thanks, Harry.
Well, I've had the privilege of hanging out with Daniel for a while, and all I can tell you is make sure you're buckled in. It's a wild ride. Marinas.
Yes, sorry, thank you. Coming in for the landing. Thanks to yourself, Angelise, for hosting us today, Harry, and my fellow panelists. You've been absolutely spectacular. Daniel, I don't think we are as different as you might think. In fact, there will be a very eager and excited coffee request coming through from my side to you immediately after our chat today. From my side, I think in terms of what we need to do when it comes to leadership and ethics, we always look in the mirror first. So that is and thank you, Anita, for that. Put the oxygen mask on yourself first before assisting others, like they say in the aeroplane. And then after that, checking your own heart and your own attitudes in terms of how you look at these things, where you are in terms of your attitude towards issues of mental health and towards your people, and what you need to be bringing to the table to create the space for them to deal with mental issues with your assistance or with you rather than despite you. And then just one closing thought in terms of supporting someone with mental illness. My advice is to support them in the same way you would support someone with a physical illness. I read somewhere once, when you get cancer, everyone sends flowers, but if you get an anxiety disorder, everyone stops calling. And the destigmatization of mental health, something as general and generalized and common as mental illness, shouldn't be dealt with stigma and shame and that kind of thing. It can be dealt with as openly as any other health issue, and with love and support and with self-awareness.
Very nice. Sure. Profound words to end us off with. It's been my privilege to facilitate today's session. Daniel, Anita, Marinus, you have all been fantastic panelists. The engagement we've received from our audience shows that. And I'm excited for us to break these conversations down into little bite-sized pieces and make sure that we send it out on our social media platforms. Again, if you've been a part of today and we have triggered something good or bad in you, and you want to get in touch with us, email info@unashamedlyethical.com. and we'd be happy to engage with you. We are building a network of leaders across the world that want to transform nations by being transformed leaders. And we do that by taking a stand for ethics, values, and clean living. And all the leaders that have spoken here today has been a part of this journey. And all I can say is it might be simple, but it's not easy. And the reality is we need all the help we can get. And please reach out to our panelists if you feel like you need help on your journey. And we look forward to our next event. Our next webinar will be in the month of July. And so we are looking forward to our next event, which will be a global webinar. We will be receiving panelists from across the world, from Brazil, the USA, London, Ghana, and South Africa. So looking forward to that next event. If you are in South Africa, we have a mountain bike event on the 14th of May, and there's information on our social media pages. Thank you again, panelists, and all our viewers and listeners. We look forward to engaging with you the next time.